In our previous lecture, we looked at how to set preferences. In this lecture, we're going to look at how to get preferences and use them in our application. So we're going to look, I'm looking at Java View, we're going to look at our location activity, location finder. Let me Control M so we can zoom up on this. And previously, what we've done when we look for location is we're just saying 60 seconds, which is 60 times 1,000 milliseconds per, or 1,000 milliseconds per second. It's kind of a hard-coded number. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this with a variable. Let me see if it'll let me quick fix this. Extract to local variable. That will be fine for now. Okay? And we're going to just call this int GPS interval. That's fine. So you see I'm taking that 60 seconds and I'm turning that into a variable called GPS interval. Now I can select that. I can, and this is something obviously we've done in the past, but setting up a GPS refresh. So I'm going to say convert local variable to field now, okay? And we see what that's done. What that's done is it has made a field, or some people would call it an attribute or a member variable. Basically a variable that's visible throughout the entire application. So, okay, looks good to me. Probably best thing to do is to initialize it up in the onCreate method instead of initializing it down in request location updates, because this method might be called frequently, where onCreate is going to be called only when we first create our screen. So what I need to do is I need to access a static method from the class called preference manager, and I'm going to call get default shared preferences, a kind of a wordy method, but nonetheless, there we go. It requires a context object. The current object is an instance of a context object, so I can simply pass in the keyword this. Now what I need to do is I need to save this to a local variable. That should be adequate. So save to local variable, and we'll just call it shared preferences, like so. There we go. So we're getting the preferences. Let me expand the screen so you can see it a bit better on the recording. Okay. Give us more room to see here. So you see what we're doing is we're just saying give me access to all of the preferences or the settings that the user might have set up. Now what we can do is we can, let me put some comments of course, get access to, oh, you know what, and I need to do this, I just realized I need to do this before I do request location updates. Get that in the right order, there we go. Okay, let me housekeep a little bit, do a little bit of cleaning. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now what we'll do, I was adding a comment, get access to all of the preferences that the user specified. Okay, and then we'll say find the GPS refresh interval. So from the shared preferences, I'm going to say shared preferences dot get string. What we need to do is we need to pass in a key, and it will give us back the value that matches that key. Now remember that key that we set earlier. We set it as a string, so it would be r.string dot pref GPS interval. Remember we created that string? We created that as a key. Key means unique, like the key to open your door. Something unique that will open a door and give us a value out of it. So r.string.pref GPS interval. Okay, so that's saying given this key, look in preferences for the value either that the user set or that the application set and the user did not overwrite. So give us whatever value the user created. Now for a default value, in case you can't find the shared preferences, okay, we'll just go ahead and give that a value of 60. Okay, now it's going to want that as a string, so we put it as a string. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to save this in a local variable. Change type of pref GPS interval to string. Okay. Well, it doesn't like something, does it? Int string. Okay, it doesn't like that. Oh, I see what I did. Okay, I referred to the constant. I need to wrap this with get string, which says take that constant value r.string.pref GPS interval, go to strings.xml and translate it. So I just need to wrap it with this get string call. Now it should be happy. Okay, control 1, assign to new local variable, and we're going to call this string, and we'll say str GPS interval. There we go. Find the GPS interval. Okay, now we're going to say convert the GPS interval to an int and store it in the field named GPS interval. So we'll say integer parse int, because that's how we convert a string to an int, str GPS interval, and we're going to assign that to GPS interval, like so. Now, if this were a running program, I would really want to wrap that in a try-catch block in case the user entered text or something that couldn't be parsed, and have that try-catch block just default it to, say, 60. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to say try. This is kind of being a bit proactive. If the user entered a string that could not be parsed to a number, the exception we would get back would be a number format exception. The trick is, if that happens and we don't catch it, it might crash the program. So what we catch. I need to put catch. I used that wrong. Okay, catch. So what I might do is, if we are unable to parse the string, just use the default of 60. GPS interval equals 60. I would much rather go to a default value of 60 than crash the program. And the trick is, because we've given the user a text field, we haven't given the user a pre-selected list or anything. Because we've given the user a text field, the user could enter any text. That text might not be easily convertible to a number. And if it's not convertible, then it will throw a number format exception. If we don't handle that case, it will crash the program. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying if we have invalid data, let's ignore the invalid data and just go with our default of 60. Another option might be to give the user a multiple choice list instead of a free text field that has predefined intervals in it, like maybe 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 120 seconds, things like that. That would be a better way to control the user input. To be honest with you, in mobile applications, try to limit the amount of free text fields that you use. I always prefer something like a list where the user can pick from the list, or some kind of spinner or selector. Try to cut down on those free entry text fields, because that's uncontrolled input that can lead to errors. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save. And let me see, do we still have, okay, I'm going to save, and we're going to run this in the debugger. And we're going to watch what happens. But first, what I'll do, I'll go ahead, but while I have the debugger off, I'm going to go ahead and change that interval to another number. We'll see if it sticks between sessions. Okay, so I'm going to change the GPS frequency from 60 to 30. Okay. So hopefully it will let me... Okay, there we go. I was hoping it would let my keyboard interact with it. So 30. Notice there's no save button. We don't have to save. It automatically saves. We simply have to leave the screen. Again, that's a new paradigm. In my day, when I was in college, we always had to hit the save button or we would lose our work. And these days of Android and Ajax and mobile phones, it just automatically saves. That's a design principle. Automatically save. Because hitting a save button is an additional task we're asking the user to do. And remember our 3 design rules: simplify, enchant, and amaze. For simplification, we don't want to have the user do anything the user doesn't have to do. So we have that going. I'm going to right click, I'm going to choose debug as, and then Android application. And with any luck, it should notice that we do have this app running, and we choose OK. And we sit back, relax, take a drink of diet caffeinated cola, and we wait for a moment as it comes up on our screen. Okay, the application is up now. So what I'm going to do is set a breakpoint Ooh, okay. Okay, good. I want to make sure I didn't go too far there. Set a breakpoint, and we're going to watch as we enter. Let me Control M so we can focus on this. We're going to watch as we enter the GPS screen. We're already there, aren't we? Yes, we are. So I'm going to choose GPS to plant again. Let's see if we can cause it to recreate. You know, I might have gone too late already. I'm going to go to search plants and then run back. Okay, here we go. So I choose F6 to step over, or I can also choose the little arrow key here. Okay, get my shared preferences. Now, let's see. It's going to try to get the shared preferences that I set, or it's going to set it to a default of 60. I'm going to choose to go over, and let's see what we got. If I mouse over, we're going to see a value of 30. And if you recall, what I did is I preset that to be 30 instead of 60. So you notice that it's using 30 instead of our default preference of 60. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to parse that from a string to a number, and I'm going to save it in this attribute called GPS interval. Finally, when I request location updates, we will step into that. I'm going to use the step into. What we're going to see is that it's going to use 30 seconds here times 1,000, and that's what it's going to use to request location updates. A little reminder on this. What do we mean by request location updates? When we associate ourselves with the GPS service, we have a location manager, and what we're specifying here is that we want to use the GPS satellites. Most of the time, that's what you want to use. Your other options are cell tower triangulation. You can also occasionally use Wi-Fi signals, things like that. But GPS is pretty common because, frankly, it's freely available and it's available worldwide. Okay, so then we have the GPS interval times 1,000. What that means is send me changes at this interval. I've set it up to send changes now. It was originally 60 seconds. Now I have it at 30 seconds. The 0 means send me changes when the distance changes by this much from where I last was. And then this just means a listener that's capable of receiving these location updates. So we want to specify either the time or the distance to do updates. When I initially played around with this, I set 0 for both, which means maximum. Send me maximum updates because there's no constraint on it. And I found that I got very, very frequent updates. I would raise a toast every time I would get an update, and the toasts were just piling on top of each other. That will drain your battery pretty quickly, especially if you're doing a lot of action when you receive that update. So you definitely want to set either the time or the distance. And this is a great setting to use for the user where you can give a default value something like 60 seconds. But if the user wants to conserve battery, you can take that down. And to be honest with you, if I were making this a setting in a live app, even having a setting which is GPS refresh interval in seconds, that's not really what a user wants to know. What a user really wants is a toggle, something that either says uh, try to save battery life or try to make GPS more accurate. So something kind of like a slider or something like that. That would be a much better preference here to use. Some kind of slider that would say have conserved battery life on one end and accurate GPS information on the other. So the user can slide between the two and make a trade-off. That's much more intuitive than GPS refresh interval. The user doesn't care about GPS refresh interval. The user doesn't speak in those terms. The user speaks in the terms of, do I want to save battery power, or do I want even more frequent, more reliable GPS? So, in hindsight, that might be something to do. That might be an advanced exercise to implement a slider. Meanwhile, what we covered in this exercise was how to retrieve a preference by using our shared preferences, our preference manager, get default shared preferences, how to supply a default, but then also get a value that the user set, how to handle data that the user might have set incorrectly by trying to parse from a string to a number, and then catching if the user put in an invalid entry in that field, and then still going back to the default, and then using that number to set up our GPS. So that's all for now. If there's interest, maybe we'll go into an advanced preferences discussion, and we'll take a look at using a slider. So let me know if that's something you'd find interesting, and we'll take a look. Thank you.